Hello friends, I have a different kind of video for you today. This is going to focus a little bit more on a US context, and I know that I have a lot of international subscribers and viewers, and I'm going to invite you to go along with me here because, a lot of what happens in the United States impacts the world, and we're seeing a lot of that right now. And my intention here is to really bring some hope. I hope to bring some hope and possibly some direction, some new possibilities in this really chaotic, conflictual, confusing time. So this video is for you if you've been feeling anxious or downright afraid, or despairing, or confused, or overwhelmed, or just uncertain. Because we're in a time when so many things that we have counted on are just shredding around us. And so we don't really know what to rely on. And there are forces at work that are actively trying to make you feel that way. And so what I want to do, I hope, is to provide some ballast, right, to all of that noise that's happening out there that has force behind it. I don't mean it doesn't have force behind it, but to say that we can balance ourselves in relationship to all of that. So this video is for you if you're feeling that way, and if you're someone who really does not want to feed the fight. You don't want to be in the conflict, and you don't know what to do. You're like, wow, there is so much polarization and so many different opinions and so much fighting going on. And I don't really want to participate in any of that. And yet I don't want to crawl in bed and lock the door and say enough, right? So this is really for you if you're feeling that way. So hang in here with me for a minute, and I hope I can make this clear for you. Well, I give a little bit of context that I think will be helpful. My experience, having been a historicist and a scholar by training and by nature, I think that context really makes a huge difference to our experience, to our expectations, to our ability to navigate different situations. So hang on here with me for a second. So if you've been with me for a while, you know that I do human design transits, and I'm a human design expert, and I'm a sovereignty mentor, and I've been offering human design transit reports for, over 5 years now. Because I do think that knowing what's going on in our solar system has a big impact on us. And when we're able to purposely work with it, it can really help us, as particularly navigating times like the ones we're in right now. So I want to focus in this video on a particular astrological alignment that I think can give us hope for what's happening. Now, there's a lot of different astrology that's going on. I'm not going to go into all of it. I'm going to pull this one piece out, which is that there are alignments that are happening between all of our outer planets, Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus. There was an exact minor grand trine back in August when they were all at the first degree of the signs that they were in. They had just moved in. Both Uranus and Neptune retrograded and now are on their way back to that point they were in. And when they do, we're going to get this alignment that is very similar to what was going on in the 1960s. There was a seed point with Uranus and Pluto in particular around 1965, 1966. And the reason I bring it up here is that was such an incredible seed point for cultural, social, political, and economic changes that transformed our world. I know what happened in the United States better because it was my environment. But of course, this revolution happened all around the world, and it happened at every level of society and every aspect of culture. Just think about this for a minute, right? On the one hand, it was a very dynamic and tumultuous and conflictual time as well. We had the Cold War. We had the Vietnam War. There was a draft in this country, right? Young men were being forced to go and fight a war. Many of them, they didn't believe in that war. They certainly didn't want to go. Some of them went to Canada. Some of them went and came back and were never, ever the same again. That was really, really difficult for all of us, right? But at the same time, there was this explosion of so many other things. So, for example, like for women, we got the pill. The pill came out first in 1960, but was really popularized by the mid-60s, right? And it gave women a level of control over their reproductive nature that we hadn't had en masse, maybe ever before, but certainly not in memory. So freed from the fear of getting pregnant, this really fueled feminism that happened. We also had the civil rights movement, which started in the 50s, but got really strong in the 60s when we had legislation changed around voting rights. We had the end of segregation, right? It was a massive change in terms of legalities in this country, followed not too much longer in the 70s with a lot of legislation around gender roles. And of course, we had Roe v. Wade in 1972. So we had all of that legislation, and that also impacted the economy a lot because women started entering the workforce in different ways than they had before. African Americans tried and succeeded in many cases, but were able to enter into the economy in ways that were different than before. We also had Native American movement. The LGBTQ movement got started in the 60s and 70s, right? Huge changes in civil rights. But then let's also remember the music, right? The incredible music that came out of that time. We had folk music that really inspired the anti-war movement. We had psychedelic rock that grew out of rock and roll, but then became its own thing. And there was all this art that went with psychedelic rock as well, right? So many, think tie-dyed shirts and light shows and, it's all kinds of stuff. And so, and then out of that, we got other kinds of music that grew out of that. And we still today, so much of the music here was actually seeded during that time. Much popular music still uses a lot of the standards that happened during this 15-year period from about 1965 until about 1980, when the backlash started to happen. So I'm mentioning this because we have that same alignment that is happening now from about 2025 through 2028. And so we have this blessing, if you will, that are coming from the planets that goes along with the breakdown of Pluto and Aquarius, right? Where the old order is shredding around us. And it's unstoppable. And we have two timelines that are emerging. One that is more totalitarian, one that is more artificial and technological. And then we have another that is more heart-based and earth-based and spirituality-based, aiming towards unity consciousness. Of course, there's many, many timelines and everyone has their own choices, but there are these two huge trajectories, right, that we get to choose from. I'm going on the heart-based, earth-based spirituality timeline. Right? That's the one I'm going for. I feel like human design and astrology has been around for a lot longer, but human design has been a huge blessing for us to help us to navigate this time that we're in. So we can look at all the breakdown and we can get caught in that and we can get righteous, we can get afraid, we can get depressed, all of those things. But we could also make another choice. which is to say, how can I participate in a cultural blossoming at this time? How can I be a voice for developments that I want to see as the basis of a world that I would be proud to leave to future generations? How can I participate at this time to help us to stay in our creativity, to foster our intuition, to be able to know that we are co-creators. We're not victims, and we're able to actually create the new world that we want to live in. And it doesn't really matter what you're interested in, because every single aspect of culture and society is transforming, and it's going to transform a lot over the next 10, 15 years. You think about that time of the 60s, right? 65 to about 1980. It was a good, solid chunk of time. And so we are moving into a radically new time. And depending on what you're tuning into, right? If you're tuning into the galactic news, there's really good news coming from the galactic news, right? Or you're just tuning into your own intuition and your own heartfelt sense of, I am here to live with compassion, with caring, to be in relationship with my neighbors and our world, where we are going to work together to heal our planet, to heal our relationships, and to create islands of coherence in the midst of chaos, which are seed points for us moving forward. Every one of us can do that in some way. Maybe you care about animals and you want to see a way to help work with animals. Maybe you're into agriculture, you're into permaculture or into regenerative agriculture, and you want to participate in that. Maybe you are a musician, or you want to be a musician, and you want to create music that is really, helping us to be in our hearts and to uplift us and help us to make it through this time. Maybe you're an artist and you want to create kind of avant-garde art that is going to help us open up to see new things, see our world differently. Maybe you care about children and you want to work on education, different forms of education that are not so left-brained, right? Not so analytical, but actually serve the whole person, right? There is no shortage of places in our world where you could participate and make a change, right? There's no shortage of possibilities. So if you get overwhelmed and you get confused, pause, take a breath, come inside, right? Tune into your own heart and take some time to see what would really make me feel more alive if I were participating in that. What could make me feel like, oh gosh, this is something that I want to help bring into the world. It's a concept I've had, or maybe I heard it from somebody else, and I really want to help this to blossom. Because we're at a seed point, right? We're at a seed point. So the blossoming isn't happening now. But if we don't plant seeds, there will be no blossoms, right? So we have to be planting seeds. And we're still in a preparation period. We have an ignition point that happens in February when Saturn and Neptune meet at the 0 degree of Aries on February 20th. They're in the gate 25 in the human design system, the love of spirit. And remember, the 0 point of Aries is the very beginning of the astrological year, the astrological wheel, and it is the creation point. And so we have these giant teachers of Neptune and Saturn that are going to be moving through our lives and giving us the energy that we need to create the new. Aries is I'm an Aries sun. Aries is very active. It's our agency, right? It's our ability to engage. So if you've been feeling, we've been in this retrograde with the outer planets, and if you've been feeling a little like you're slogging through your own personal clearing process and letting go, and, maybe clearing out your house, and you notice some relationships are moving away and others are coming in, and, it could be that places where you live are falling away, or it could be jobs or working in the world. Like, there's so many things, and you might feel like you've really been in that. I certainly have been. And we're definitely being called to help to heal our trauma and release our patterns. Absolutely, in preparation for this time. But my suggestion is try to do that creatively. Try to do it, use your intuition. Because even if we think about some of the things that were seeded during that time, I was thinking about Est. Those of you might remember Est, right? It grew into landmark education, which is still here, still active, still serving thousands and thousands of people in its new form. Or I was thinking about rebirthing, which started in the Haight in San Francisco in the 1960s, right? And I trained in Clarity Breathwork, which was a offshoot of rebirthing. And Clarity Breathwork is alive and well. My mentors are still offering it. Right? So there are things that were seeded then that we are still benefiting from now. So you can look to all kinds of different places in the outer world and just use your felt sense, right? Not your mind. Don't think about it so much. Feel into it. What gives you energy when you imagine doing that thing or being in that environment? Or participating in that part of our world, right? Or bringing forth something that never actually existed before, but you want to bring it into existence, right? I know for me, I'm participating in a project in Costa Rica called Ecovilla San Mateo. And I was called to this almost 3 years ago. And at the time, I was really saying to myself, I wanted to be with people who are creating the future now. And I live in a pretty progressive town, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on here, but I just couldn't find my place here. And then this opportunity came across my field, and I had an immediate yes to participating. And it's going to be a little while still before I go and I build my house there. But this community is now starting to form. People are building their houses. There's going to be like 1,000 people there. We're building kind of a town. And it's very much based in the kind of ethic of care, cooperation, collaboration, creativity, caring for our world. There's a lot of it is regenerative. Like there's a lot of regenerative agriculture that's going on right now. Many of us are going to participate in that when we're working with our own lots and our own, immediate environment. There's already food forests that are being planted there. It was really a degraded piece of land. And so we're participating in helping that part of Costa Rica to heal and to look at the watershed and see how we can help with that piece. And then looking at how do we do what we're doing without so much gentrification, which is part of any time you go and do development, that is a part of it. But we're actively looking at how do we actually communicate with and be more collaborative with and really embedded in the local community, rather than feeling like we're coming in and imposing this thing on top of everyone who is already there. So that's something that I was called to and I'm participating in, and is a particular kind of cultural project. And there's many people who are called to that environment, at that project, that are similar. We really want to help create an island of coherence, right, in the midst of an increasingly chaotic world. Now that's a big project, okay? You don't have to start there. You can start in your own local community. And I was just talking to a friend of mine, and she was sharing that her home has become kind of a meeting place for people in her community, so that people come and they share and they eat food and they dance and they have fun, and they just are creating an island of joy and pleasure and sharing, also holding each other, holding space for what's going on. Right? So that's what one person is doing. I know I'm part of a women's Joe Dispenza meditation group. We meet a couple times a month. We're also purposely creating islands of coherence when we do our meditations together, and we offer them, we do them for ourselves individually and offer them to the world. So whatever is going on in your life, you can participate in creating an island of coherence, even if that island for right now is just you. You can start there. And the more that you tune inside, the more that you go into your heart and you find that quiet and still place inside of you where you can hear your inner guidance, you can feel your inner guidance, right? There can be space inside of you so that the communication can happen. It won't happen if you're too in your analytical brain. It won't happen if you're in fear or if you're in conflict energy, because you won't be able to hear your spirit if you're in that human mishigas, honestly. But if you come in there, you'll get direction about the next thing for you to do. It won't necessarily be a full plan for the whole year, the next 5 years, or whatever that is, right? But it'll be next steps for you. For some of the women in my sovereign sisterhood, they're really working with boundaries. They're really working about creating that island of coherence that is themselves by disentangling themselves from some of the dysfunctional ways that they've been with their families, usually. Right? A lot of stuff going on with adult kids in my community, because most of my community are Gen X women, some boomer women, Gen X women. So it's like we're dealing with the adult kids, the aging parents. There's a lot of pressure and responsibility, and carving out a place for yourself to hear yourself really think, not the programs, not the fear, but really be able to think, carving out some space so you can feel what's going on in your heart, right? That is going to give you ballast. And then joining with other people who are also doing that amplifies exponentially. It's not just 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 10, right? So it's like that. So I encourage you to find those environments. I'm going to be doing an event called Ambassador of the Future on January 31st. And you're invited to come. I'll put a link down below where you can find out more about it. And this is really an inspiration and an invitation to step out of any victimhood that you can feel is there, or any rescuer that you've been in, right? We're evolving out of the victim, perpetrator, rescuer paradigm. And my version of that is we're becoming ambassadors of the future. And to become an ambassador of the future means that you're going to be more centered in and led by your heart, which is your spirit. It is your inner being. It is your divine self. It is the more expanded part of you that is part of the all that is, right? It is you. It's not separate from you. It's about breaking down this self-concept that you are an isolated individual and everything in my life is up to me, which will lead to victim consciousness many times, because that's a really hard way to live, into recognizing that we are connected to our earth, even if we don't know what that feels like or what that looks like or how to really lean into it all the time. But to say that this is a value for us, right? This is a value, this is an aspiration, this is something that we're working towards in our own individual ways and in small islands of coherence. And they make a big difference. There are different kinds of actual studies that have been done by HeartMath, and then in the InterScience Institute, which is doing work with Joe Dispenza's work, and it's showing the impact of how doing this kind of work really does shift us individually, but then also impacts things outside of us as well. It's a very exciting time when we tune into that set of possibilities. that what we do in here absolutely influences what goes on out there. So, the invitation is to be an ambassador of the future, which is to say, I am going to put my attention and my energy on what I want to emerge in the world rather than on what is scaring the bejesus out of me right now or I'm feeling really depressed about. So if that appeals to you, I invite you to come to Ambassadors of the Future. And we're going to explore this more together, and we're going to look at some of these pieces kind of conceptually, but then we're also going to do a lot of experiential work, and some of that is nervous system work, because we really need to regulate and rehabilitate our nervous systems to be able to manage what's going on here. But then we also need to tap into that intuition and creativity. And if you've been with me for a while, you know I talk about intuition and creativity all the time. And human design is big on intuition and creativity. So that's some of the themes that we'll be working with in Ambassador of the Future. So you'll be able to bring in what it is that you're kind of struggling with or you're working with right now, and look at how you can transform that and update it and upgrade it so that it is something that really fuels you and feeds you and nurtures you. And you know how you can start showing up in the world. That's going to give you energy instead of draining you. That's going to inspire you instead of depressing you. That's going to give you a community that feeds you rather than feeling like being an isolated individual. Right? So we actually do have the destiny of our world in our hands. And it's going to be determined by the choices that we make. And if you were with me for the Best Choice Challenge that I did back in November, I talked a lot about this then, which is that we tend to make choices out of our programs, out of our conditioned behavior, out of belief systems that we might not even really agree with anymore, but are still operational. So how do we make new choices, and choices that really serve, and move from struggle to service? So if this appeals to you, I hope to see you on the 31st. And if that doesn't work out for you, I do really encourage you to pull out your journal and see, what do I want to contribute to this cultural blossoming? What can I seed now that may even be going 30, 40, 50, 60 years from now? And then in February, we're going to get on the fire horse. That happens at the new moon on February 17th. And then we're going to blast off on the 20th, where we get Neptune and Saturn at the 0 degree of Aries, and the new era gets going in earnest. Many blessings, my friends. Take good care of yourself. Take care of each other. And I'll see you in another video very soon. Bye for now.